Tonight, Maria's direct hit, devastating Puerto Rico.
The biggest catastrophe in Puerto Rican history.
Evacuate or die.
Puerto Rico es una zona de desastre.
Desastre natural.
Desastre.
I've been reporting on large-scale disasters for 2 decades. Superstorms, wars, economic meltdowns. My focus is less on the fact of these shocks than on how they are so often exploited. How governments, corporations, and investors have learned to take advantage of the desperation and distraction in the aftermath of these events to push through radical policies, privatization, deregulation, and austerity laws that remake societies in the interests of a tiny elite. I saw it happen in Iraq after the US invasion, when the country was treated as a blank canvas for libertarian fantasies, and again in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, when the storm became the excuse to rapidly shut down public schools and public housing and replace them with more profitable alternatives. Even before Hurricane Maria made landfall in September of 2017, many Puerto Ricans worried about another episode of this long story, about how the storm could be used to attack their austerity-starved public services and to snap up damaged beachfront property on the cheap.
As you can imagine, we were all taken by surprise, everyone, at the magnitude of this storm. Initially, in those first couple of days, we felt that perhaps this whole business would be wiped out. I can speak to the luxury side, and surprisingly enough, we did not see any loss of interest in the marketplace.
Welcome to Dorado Beaches. We have here a double high ceiling in the living room.
Let's see the garden, because the magic of this house is the garden. You see there's a level of sophistication, yet Caribbean flair.
So are you hearing from people who think they can get a good deal in Puerto Rico because of the hurricane?
Absolutely, everybody. We call it pre-Maria, post-Maria.
There's been a lot of talk about disaster capitalism here in Puerto Rico and in many places in the world that have been hit by disasters in recent years. What makes Puerto Rico different?
One of the particularities of Puerto Rico is that this major historic storm occurs on top of an already existing major historic economic crisis. People were already in a kind of state of shock, and severe economic policies were already being applied.
So what are the ways that a crisis like this can be profitable?
As you know, as you've written about, in these moments, a lot of things are suspended, expectations are changed, and so laws can be passed and things can be put into place that would have otherwise not been acceptable. And I think right now the main thing that was already on the horizon is going to be the privatization of public services. So some speculate that part of why the electricity company has been so slow in getting back up is that they're preparing for privatization of all of it. Things also like public transportation system, all of those services that were already weakened, had already been disinvested from by the government because of the financial crisis. It's to be expected that all of them are probably going to be sold, and they'll probably be sold at a very low price, because now they can say, oh, because of Maria, everything is devastated, everything is broken.
It has been the most devastating natural disaster over the last 100 years. So naturally, infrastructure suffered, telecommunications suffered. Now, I believe that can be seen as a silver lining opportunity.
Deseo informarte una de las iniciativas de mayor impacto para la construcción de un nuevo y moderno Puerto Rico: la transformación de nuestro sistema energético. Durante los próximos días comenzará el proceso donde se venderán activos de la AEE a empresas que transformarán el sistema de generación a uno moderno, eficiente y menos costoso para el pueblo.
I met with the governor just after the hurricane, and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to double down, I'm going to treble down, I'm going to quadruple down, because I believe in Puerto Rico. This is Isla Verde Beach, and to me, this is the finest urban beach in the Western Hemisphere. This is the new pool that we're putting in. We're building a new beach bar and restaurant. You'll see next door there's a new hotel. There'll be another new hotel on the point. Really, what the government is doing and has the chance to do is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to repair and rebuild the infrastructure of the island. And if the infrastructure is built well, if the electricity, the roads, the water is taken to 21st century levels, that can only help us all.
The big question hanging over the reconstruction is this: who is Puerto Rico for? Is it for Puerto Ricans, or is it for outside investors and tourists? And after a collective trauma like Hurricane Maria, who has the right to make these fateful decisions? Because many Puerto Ricans have their own ideas about how to replace their shattered infrastructure. And it isn't about selling it off for profit. It's about reimagining how the island generates energy, feeds itself, teaches its kids, and heals its sick. A people's recovery. And like the shock doctrine, it was already underway before Maria.
Casa Pueblo is a community-based organization with 38 years of history defending our national territory. We have a commitment towards sustainable development. Solar power is our first and sole energy source. We were just a few in 1999 when we started with solar power. And all of a sudden, Casa Pueblo, after the hurricane, was still running. So people came here right after the hurricane to recharge their equipment. People came here with equipment for respiratory therapy. This was an energy oasis for the community. Immediately after the hurricane, we distributed over 10,000 solar lamps to improve quality of life for the people. Now we have houses asking us for support, and we want to help people unplug from the grid, from fossil fuel. We should embrace a transition to clean energy sources. Solar is one. We have plenty of wind, we have water power, we have plenty of biomass that can be used as a source of energy to run our country. And I think Casa Pueblo, what we're doing is not waiting for the government, not waiting for the US Congress. There's a resistance from everywhere. So we're gonna do whatever is at reach to change that landscape and to tell the people of Puerto Rico that a different future is possible.
Welcome to our farm. Here we are in Orocovis, that's the center of the island. It's beautiful work.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
It is.
And it's green.
It's green, yeah.
We'd heard that there had been so much damage to the forest, but 4
Well,
months later...
Well, it was like a fire. Like a fire had passed. But now we're in shape.
In the history of Puerto Rico became a U.S. colony in 1898. During the 40s, there was a very strong push to get people out of poverty. And poverty became directly equated with being peasant, with being a farmer. So the idea was to break down rural communities, get people to the cities, get them in cement homes, and at the same time, see how we could benefit or how the U.S. could benefit from Puerto Rican production of goods that were consumed in the U.S. They start pushing large-scale coffee plantations, large-scale sugar plantations.
Puerto Rico has this situation that in terms of food security, we're very insecure because we import a lot of food. More than 80% of our food comes from abroad, right? By the port of San Juan. And we've always been saying within our movement that that's a problem, right? Because of climate change, right? We can have something happen with that port and then we'll be doomed.
Maria highlighted that within a night. The next night, we didn't have food, we didn't have water, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have anything. A lot of conventional farmers right now are starving. Even though they have amazing amount of land, they didn't have anything to harvest because they had followed the Department of Agriculture's instructions for monocultures of coffee, whereas before, traditional agroecological farm would be intercropped with oranges, with bananas, with plantains, and that provides for your family. That next day, agroecological farmers were back to the land. We had farmers already ready to sell at the markets.
We can feed the people with sustainable practices that do not harm the environment, that promote resilience within the farm and within the community. We knew that was possible even before Maria, and this is a moment for us to reflect and also make it more visible.
Tell us what you're doing.
Ahora mismo acabamos de cosechar y trajimos lo que cosechamos para pecotar la vaina y las semillas. Y llevarlo a la casa, mi mamá las puede hacer, se las paso a mi abuela. Y mi mamá se quita, como quien dice, esa preocupación de tener que pensar qué le voy a hacer a mis hijas para comer. Ahora mismo muchas personas tienen situaciones en sus casas y cuando no tengan que comer, pues aquí lo tienen, la tierra se los provee sin ninguna necesidad.
What's it like to go to school where there's this very special farm?
Wow, eso no hay palabras para describirlo porque esta clase es como llegar a otro mundo. Siempre estoy conectada con la tierra y cuando yo trabajo en ella siento como si la tocara y ella me tirara un lazo entre sí para conectarse con la humanidad.
Arturo's solar oasis, Dalma's farm school. These places feel a little bit like stepping through portals to another world, to a parallel Puerto Rico, where with little more than local knowledge and the island's famous sunshine, people have been able to power and feed their communities. But these are tiny islands of functionality in a sea of desperation, where families are still living without electricity or running water. Though Dalma's farm rebounded from Hurricane Maria in no time, the adjacent school was closed for 2 months and still lacks electricity.
It's important for the school to open because then kids need food, water, and people who share with them about their experience. The only problem is the light. We don't have light yet. The light of the sun only.
Many Puerto Ricans fear that the slowness to reopen schools, like the failure to get the lights back on, is part of a plan to radically remake the school system, to shut down more than 300 schools and privatize many of the ones that are left. It's a project that predates Maria, but when the storm hit, Puerto Rico's Secretary of Education moved it into fast forward.
You would imagine a secretary having some kind of sensibility towards our population and saying, let's open the schools, let's comfort their children, let's bring the teachers back, let's get them to talk to the peers. But that's not what happened. Immediately after the hurricane, the first thing she says is, this hurricane gives me the perfect opportunity to do the reform that I wanted to do that was not able to. We learned from the experience of Katrina what she was talking about.
Esto mano derecha en la escuela, que fue cerrada. Déjame subir y bajar. Los padres tienen un cartel con un mensaje para la Secretaría de Educación y para la comunidad, exigiendo que no se permita. Porque esa escuela se le fue, todo eso se le fue completo, el techo completo. Y conseguimos los donativos, compramos las plazas y las montamos y la escuela está abierta.
Ahora mismo aquí vinieron, aquí hay muchos contratistas y me dijeron, mira, nosotros estamos dispuestos, los mismos comercios, de venir e instalar. Entonces un momento dado yo se lo dije a la directora. Entonces me dijo, no, que aquí no permiten que entre ningún padre a tocar por los seguros, que se responsabilidad pública.
Todas las escuelas que nosotros hemos reconstruido en Buster.
Entonces,
eso es una excusa para cerrarla. Y el gobierno, como yo te dije, el gobierno apuesta al cansancio, que somos de carne y hueso y que el ser humano se desgasta y se desanima. Y nuestro trabajo es darle ánimo a la gente para que sepan que es posible revertirlo, si creemos en nosotros.
Hace unos días les comuniqué nuestra decisión de transformar la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. El camino hacia la transformación no se detiene. Hoy damos inicio a una profunda transformación de la educación. Estaremos implementando las escuelas alianzas, conocidas en algunas jurisdicciones como charter schools.
If there's something wonderful about the people of Puerto Rico, is that even though most of them lost their homes, even though a lot of them had no food, a lot of the people, they fought for their schools.
La educación no es un negocio y nosotros vamos a defenderla, cueste lo que nos cueste.
On my last day in Puerto Rico, I visited Humacao, one of the hardest hit parts of the island. It was for a gathering of several hundred organizers and intellectuals from across Puerto Rico and a few visitors from further afield. It was billed as a people summit against disaster capitalism and for other worlds.
En ese momento, entonces, cuando todo el mundo está preocupado por sobrevivir, por buscar agua, por ver cómo no está cobrando, por ver cómo consigue alimentos, en esos momentos entonces se plantea como la única solución ante el desastre, entonces privatizar, cortarnos nuestros derechos, se establece un estado de excepción que entonces permite pasar todas estas medidas poco populares en un momento en que la población no tiene la fuerza, o ellos piensan que no tenemos la fuerza para reaccionar debidamente y a tiempo a estas situaciones.
It's the first time movements have gathered across such a broad spectrum since Maria changed everything. And it builds on a proud history of resistance, from the independence movement to the anti-austerity and anti-debt uprising that peaked in the months before Hurricane Maria.
Nosotros lo que nos mueve al centro de todo es la pregunta, ¿qué es lo que nos hace feliz? Y esa pregunta nos guía porque la forma más importante de nosotros poder presentar una alternativa a lo que estamos viviendo es una alternativa que en la raíz esté la felicidad.
I think my dream, and I think about this all the time, is that there's going to be a network of communities that are building locally, that are creating these economies, these industries based on food, based on energy regeneration, that through this crisis, the Puerto Rican people realize that they actually know what the solutions are and are able to operationalize them.
But many here in Humacao are convinced that if the post-disaster gold rush is allowed to continue unchecked, it will foreclose on these kinds of bold solutions. Land is scarce in Puerto Rico, and if it all gets snapped up for more office towers, hotels, golf courses, and mansions, there won't be any left for traditional farms and renewable energy projects. For now, these two very different visions of the future are advancing in their own parallel worlds, one on the backs of shocks, the other in spite of them. But both are gaining power fast, and in the high-stakes months to come, collision is inevitable.
Venenos tus monólogos, tus discursos incoloros. No ves que no estamos solos, millones de polo a polo. Al son de un solo coro marcharemos con el tono, con la convicción que basta de robo. Tu estado de control, tu trono podrido de oro, tu política y tu riqueza y tu tesoro. No, la hora sonó, no permitiremos más tu doctrina del shock. La hora sonó, la hora sonó, del shock. La hora sonó, la hora sonó, del shock. Riqueza y tu tesoro, no, la hora sonó, no permitiremos más tu doctrina del shock. La hora sonó.
And leads us to our speaker. It's a privilege to hear Dr. Sajed Kamal. I'll say personally, some years ago, I worked for the city of Cambridge as an environmental planner, and we had a bunch of CRLS students come and talk to us about a project they had done around climate change in the Arctic. And somebody asked the students why they had chosen to focus on climate. And this one kid said, I'm from Bangladesh, and if we don't do something, my country will drown. And I think that just hit us all and inspired us to actually look further afield in the city of Cambridge and to take different kinds of action. So Dr. Sajed Kamal is definitely a man of action. He's a native of what is now Bangladesh and a pioneer in the work of transitioning the world from fossil fuel consumption to a sustainable path of innovation, renewable technology, and peace. And he's focused a lot on how developing nations can use renewable technologies and how these really can transform the world. He teaches in the Sustainable International Development Program at Brandeis, and he's been involved in this field for over 25 years as a lecturer and international consultant, and with projects in the United States, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Armenia, and El Salvador, among others. He's published a lot of books and articles, and his most recent book, which is terrific, is called Renewable Solutions: How We Can Fight Global Warming, Prevent Energy Wars, and Transition to a Sustainable Future. Among his many awards are the 2007 Boston Mayor's First Annual Green Award and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the New England Regional EPA. He's also a painter, sculptor, and photographer, and is shown in all of those media. And he's a poet and an internationally known translator of Bengali poetry. And to me, that says a lot about the importance of bringing everything together and to make the shifts that we need. And he sort of really embodies all of that. So it's a real pleasure to introduce him.
Thank you, Rosalie. Thank you very much for being here. I know it's not a very comfortable night to be out. I really appreciate that you have taken the time to be here. And I also want to thank MAPA. And it's, to me, as we look at something like this, and concepts like disaster capitalism and climate change impact on, in this case, Puerto Rico. But what really is happening is that these are in microcosm what is happening around the world. So it can be really, in a way, we have a choice to make. Either we become discouraged and feel powerless, or we say the other way, go the other direction, say that, well, what is this telling us? And I think that sometimes if we say that our goal is to really find solutions, and if we work toward that solution by keeping our vision as much as possible clear and perfecting it as much as possible, I think there can be solutions out of it. And so to me, it's always inspiring, not just discouraging, because I didn't cause that. The choice for me to look at this and say that, where do I go from here? And that's what I thought that I would share with you, that what are some of the possibilities, alternate scenario, both for Puerto Rico around the world. And then I would like to make it as much as possible discussion, and also discussion on some potential as well as strategies. And just before that, I also want to say thanks to a number of people. To me, it's always inspiring for me to see that where other people are, where they have been. Rosalie is sitting there. We met her many years ago, and as she said, she's continuing to do what needs to be done. Cole, we were young students in the late 60s, early 70s, and we're putting out this Fenway News with social justice and community rights, and we're lining up the columns. There were no computers, so we go up the steps and line them up to see they're lined up. Then run to the printer to get them out, because this issue needs to come out to the people. And he's still doing that. So, and then you have other people, I say Werner and Julie, they're carrying their camera everywhere and to record some of these things that needs to be documented, and then word has to go out. There's John Payne sitting here. He's supporting all these causes to get things really, that thing needs to be done. Sometimes things are discouraging, but well, you act on it even more. There's Andy Stern sitting there. I've gone up with him under the wind turbines, up inside the wind turbine. He's still doing that. So to me, and I'm sure that amongst you, many of you are doing that too. Some are doing it for more years, and some are doing here. George is sitting right there. He tells the world all the important things that are happening around the world right now. And also in Massachusetts, really what people can do, educate themselves. So to me, in short, is that, I think sometimes disaster can either create that kind of possibilities of, disaster capitalism, or sometimes disasters can also bring people together. And I think it's a choice we make. Because when something happens, we can either resign and not talk to each other, or say, hey, let's get together, let's see what we can do. And here's John sitting there for many, many years as well. So what I feel is that what is happening in Puerto Rico is important for what is happening in Puerto Rico. We have to keep that human perspective, just focus on the place itself, not just generalize it and dehumanize it. At the same time, it is also important to know that what is happening in Puerto Rico has been happening, other places, has happened, and at this point will happen, really. So what can we learn from this? And what can we do about what we could not do in the past, and what we do in the future? There's it's a battle for paradise. Well, that's a good title. Look at real paradise that's happening. That paradise has been wiped out, really, you see? So to me, there's this things we have to make these connections, really. And none of it is unimportant. And we have to really keep that global perspective and at the same time do something that we can do within our limits. And I think that is a potential that I feel that we underestimate because things are so big, so huge. What can I do as an individual? But I have always found that we all can do what we can do within our limits. And that limit can be little or can be big. And that potential is huge because we all can do that. So to me, now coming back to the energy scenario, again, energy is one piece of the picture. Just as climate change is one piece of the picture, but climate change is related to war, peace, environment, social justice. That's all related, and so is renewable energy. Energy is connected to economy. It's connected to war. It's connected to environment and climate change. So to me, these are all integrated, holistic way of looking at it. So that's why I titled my book, The Renewable Revolution, How We Can Fight Climate Change, Prevent Energy Wars, transition to revitalize the economy and transition to a sustainable future, because these are whole, one connected with the others. So with that in mind, what I would like to do is share with you some slides of how these different technologies are being applied around the world. And to me, it may be the fastest slideshow you see in your life, but I don't regret that, because my hope is to then zero in with some specific issues in that, specific possibilities. But sometimes it's good to have a think globally, act locally is very important. The reason I say is that sometimes people feel that, well, only this thing, what is that going to do? But no, we can start here, but it doesn't have to end there. And so to me, we saw something that are happening in Puerto Rico, and I've been looking at some of the things, and it's inspiring, but it needs to be brought out. And I'm great that Naomi Klein brought that out. So there are, at the same time, things are happening around the world that could be relevant to that. And at the same time, it is not just an energy issue, a social justice issue, a political issue, who controls it, how it is done, those are also very important. And that's the part that I'd like to come back and discuss with each other. So with that in mind, let me just go into the slides. Sun, the energy source, renewable energy sources, light, wind, heat, water movement, photosynthesis, and renewable energy technologies, some of the corresponding ones are photovoltaics for electricity, wind generators for electricity, solar thermal system for hot water and other purposes, hydroelectric system for electricity, solar cookers, there are the variations, hot box, biogas, dish, solar cook it, and then biogas you can for cooking, lighting, heat, etc. So this is from renewable energy sources to renewable energy technologies. Okay, 4 basic types of installations are standalone, grid connected, hybrid, and utility scale. And we'll all see examples of all of these in pictures. Okay, it's a standalone system. This is in Brewster. You can see this little wind turbine that generates about 300 watts of electricity for the cottage, and it's been doing that for a number of years. Okay, this Hull wind turbine, and there's a 600 kilowatt, as I mentioned, Andrew Stern right sitting there. And I've been there, and in fact, climbed the tower as well, and it's really been installed in place since 2001. That was Hull 1, and this is Hull 2, and that's even bigger, 1.8 megawatt. Okay, and again, one of the questions that is becoming increasingly important is that how do the land you use? Do you use energy? Do you produce energy at the expense of land, or do you grow food at the expense of energy? The point is that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be integrated. So this is in Germany, and here in USA. Okay, and another thing is a transition. This is again in Plymouth. Plymouth, is the power plant, nuclear power plant. Well, that power plant is coming to end, and the question is that where do you go from here? And the fact that now Plymouth is putting wind turbines and solar fields, that's an important transition. Okay, you've probably seen this. If you drive along the IBEW 103 Training Center of Southeast Expressway. Okay. And this is, to me, also is very important. In a lot of these technologies can be manufactured. When we talk about colonization, one of the way colonization comes in many ways, by controlling the technology, the production of it, the manufacturing of it, and also controlling the management of it. Well, one of the things that we'll see more and more is the decentralization of application and decentralization of manufacturing, and it is fueled by the most democratic energy system in the world, that's the sun and the wind and its subsystems like the wind and heat and other things. So this was done in Bangladesh, and then you have a wind farm in the ocean, and you can see architecture and wind technologies coming together. Okay, and this is Block Island Wind Farm. Okay, buildings can be designed so it can create a wind tunnel. So this in Bahrain, you can see, you can walk from one building to the other, and those 3 wind turbines generate about 10% of the building's electricity. Okay, this is Logan Airport, and you can see this is not tall wind towers, really basically clamped to the roof. Okay, and this is energy production system and sewer treatment in Deer Island. It's another kind. And then your vertical wind turbine. I cannot point this with this. That's the Tesla, where the Tesla building is right there. It had, the wind turbine has been taken down right now. I'm not sure. I'll check on it. But at the same time, it was there generating electricity for partial need of the building. Okay, and this is vertical wind turbine. You can just, it spins, and in fact you can request a picture of your pet or your favorite flower, and they'll print it on it, silly or sweetheart. You can combine solar and vertical wind turbine. Okay, this is a micro wind tree. These are really amazing things that are happening. These are so light, and this is actually made by someone in France, like that. So wind energy is beginning to grow in trees as well. And this is a Dutch build. You can see, it's a wind turbine and solar, very light. It can be very easily locally manufactured, and many times when things are locally manufactured, they're more tuned to the local climate and the local skills, and I've seen some real improvement in, as well. Okay, this is a micro hydro. There's a stream coming down, and it's not disturbing the environment. And there's another reminder that big hydro plants can really destroy the landscape. And so renewable, we also have to be environmentally conscious and politically conscious that whether it does, do it at the expense of people and the environment or not, but it doesn't have to be. And that's another option that we can keep in mind. This is in Guatemala, and this is in Kenya. You can see nothing is disturbed, just the stream flowing down, and you connect a micro hydro. And this is again the same thing. It's a little micro hydro is providing water for agriculture there. Okay, solar hot water systems right in Boston, in Jamaica Plain. And you have a little home here in Lesotho, Africa. You can see hot water systems, solar panel in this corner, and solar cooker. Okay, solar hot water system in Lebanon. This is in India. Okay, in Bangladesh, this is a actual nature retreat. They're very committed to conservation of nature, and so they've created this retreat, and the solar panels are there to provide hot water for the entire place. This is in Zimbabwe. I was there in January at their hot water system. Okay, in Boston, Fenway Park. Okay, now solar greenhouses. This is Martha's Vineyard. That's my friend Anna Edie. You can see inside, outside it was winter, and inside it's a tropical garden. This is a native organic farm. And it's possible for them to grow saplings, during winter. So it's an early start. Okay, now this is also in India. This is minus 25 degree centigrade outside, and inside you can see it's green, practically tropical green. Okay, some solar cookers, solar box cooker, and this is a solar system, a solar cooker we built in Armenia. I'm right in the middle of the my team and their children, because I invited their children to participate in it so they can take charge of their future. This was in Zimbabwe. I mentioned I was there in January, so we did some work there. If you can see this is the children they are collecting firewood, and one of the things that one of the children said that the trees are running away from us, means that it's getting more and more difficult to really collect trees, and said we have to take that to heart and learn from the wisdom of children. Really, that has to. So, what is the solution? There can be a number of them. One is to just look at some solar cooking options. And so here we are. I'm just telling how this solar cooker works, and local people are just curious and suspicious and apprehensive. That doesn't happen. So I tell them that let's try it, and we'll come back to it later on. And I know this solar cooker works. So if it works, you give me the credit. If it doesn't, blame your son. So add some humor. So at the end of the day, we come in and it's steaming. You can see everybody's happy tasting the food. So sometimes way to people's confidence is through stomach. And this is another one that part of the project I was advising. This is with the United Church of Christ, invited me because they have a climate change mission. So they invited me to come and, help them develop some program. But part of my, approach has been to not just teach and talk about it, but also as much as possible put some things in application, in place. So we did some things there locally, and also how to get things locally, as well as this is made in South Africa. I contacted some place in South Africa, so now I'm helping them put together a joint program between South Africa, this group in South Africa, and this group in Zimbabwe. This is in Turkey, and this is in South Africa. It's amazing how quickly it cooks. There you are, having a feast. And this is a solar cooker made from tire. There are a lot of tires. You go to this country, a lot of tires floating around, because, the infrastructure is broken and cars are just sometimes next to the street and parts have been taken away, and tires are just lined up. And so you just use them. So here's that solar cooking in Boston Solar Day. I'm just showing that system to some visitors. Now cook with the sun with solar chefs, solar oven, cooks, bakes, boils, and browns all food with natural sunlight, costs nothing to operate. Okay, this is the one that I made, and I'll show you later on something that I brought here. It's very simple. It's a cut from a television box. I cut it and put some things and put it in a bag and put it out and it cooks. And this is the same principle, but this is factory made. This is like we live in Boston, in the Fenway. You see Boston skyline right behind us. And here are 2 solar cookers. We have a number of them, and so you have the one to the right, to the left from here is one I made, and the other one is called Tulsi. It's made in India, and the one feature about Tulsi is that I can put it out in the sun and cook directly from the sun. But I can also plug into our power line, and it will work as an electric oven. And we subscribe to renewable energy sources for electricity. So even in the city, we get our electricity from renewable sources. So which means that during that we can cook this during night, rains, sun or rain. There's some of the students from Brandeis, and so part of the class would be that they come and eat some solar cooked food. Biogas. This is in Bangladesh. Okay, and this is portable. The biogas tank is on top, and now they're also creating this portable biogas tanks, which is really very simple to make. This is from human waste, human feces, and it just really works so efficiently. In fact, one of my students was very instrumental in making it. And so the thing is that this is one of the things that also teaches there are a lot of barriers, of course, technological barriers, but also sometimes cultural. The moment I've said sometimes that how this is done, this is from human waste, people go like this. I said, why are you doing that? Did you smell something? No. So why did you do this? And so to me, when we talk about barriers, there are a lot of our by the time you produce gas, you don't even smell anything. You get top grade fertilizer, and a lot of it to go around the world, because there are billions of people with a lot of it to go around, so you have a lot of potential for it. Okay, and this is a really small portable biogas made in Bangladesh, locally made, and this is a huge one. It's a 1 megawatt electrical production for both electricity and fertilizer. Germany, and some of you may know, Germany has decided to go 100% renewable by 2050, relying on solar, wind, and biogas. Okay, this is just how the thing works. Now we come to photovoltaics, the direct conversion of sunlight into electricity, and it's a that's the energy source. Sun, it shines everywhere, Shakespeare. Only 1 hour of sunlight falling on the Earth's surface contains energy equivalent to what we use globally for an entire year. So the point is that we don't have energy crisis, really. We just have, a crisis of how we use them, and and what sources we turn to. 970 trillion kilowatt of energy fall from the sky every day. So, sand, polysilicon, single crystal ingot, water, wafers, cells, modules. Okay, very well tested. This is the van, oops. Okay, it jumped, I think. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, so the planes is put in the plane. There you are. Okay. All right, so now we bring it down to Earth, and you have a solar panel, charge controller going into battery, and you can use it from the battery day or night, depending on what your needs are and what the capacity is. And now you can use LED light, which really practically doubles, sometimes triples the energy production. Okay, this is where I am on the roof in El Salvador, and this is the bricklayer's house, and we put that system in. Just took us a couple of hours, and he has electricity right there, and it's a small system, very easy to install, and suddenly it cut down his electricity. Cut down his energy consumption. When we talk about colonization, actually one of the basic energy source of colonization is kerosene. People don't realize that, because most countries, they don't make kerosene. And so we cut down on that. But the sun comes there, so just use sun. And this is in Honduras, a little community in Sri Lanka, and this is in Worthington, Massachusetts. We're standing in front of Jeff Fowler's house, and solar powered medical refrigeration. You can see there are 2 small refrigerators, and so it's amazing what the camels can do. It should make us humble about other lives, really. And this is solar powered desalination station in Jeddah for electricity, as well as making turn salt water into sweet water. Okay, Belgian scientists make water from a urine machine using solar power. See, we have a lot of fairs. Earth Day, put it on there, a few of these, our Wake Up the Earth Festival in Faneuil Hall Marketplace, why not? Solar power telephone. Okay, a PV module lighting a bulb, for PV powered boat, and a solar hat with a cooling fan, helpful to keep down the heat, literally and figuratively. So that's our son. He's been generally a cool-headed young man, and I think it had to do something with his solar hat I'm bringing, we hope. Okay, this boat is catamaran. It crossed, from Spain all the way to the other side of the Atlantic to New York. Solar-powered school. You can see now the students are sitting outside because it's daytime, but the school runs also at night, and they have a library. There's classroom. They have computers. So it's really just so simple. It's in Paris. Okay, and this is land is very, very precious in Copenhagen. So you have floating student housing that's generating electricity, growing organic farm, and people are standing on the other one. So a scooter in Bangladesh. Okay, car. You can put it on top, or solar power road. France just made this road with solar panels. And very interesting, they did a study that how many cars drive over this road. And so they calculated that the energy they generate is still cost effective because they discount the number of cars because they're shedding. So solar panels doesn't have to be just on the roof, it can also be under you. And they're pretty solid. See? And again, France is another example which has been close to 75% dependent on nuclear power. And France has made an unofficial decision at this point to transition to 100% renewable energy. And they're quite confident. ADEME, which is the sort of the France's equivalent of environment and development agency, national, they feel pretty confident. So they're moving really quite rapidly. Cardiff by the Sea, that's where our son lives, and we have a little system there that powers that. Here it is. It is very much like the system that Naomi Klein showed earlier. Actually, I'll go back to that. And it's really simple to call Cuba clinic. That was school, and this is clinic, hospital. Okay, this is the Kalani Rural Multi-Service Center in Dhamrai, Bangladesh. This was in 1989. I introduced solar in Bangladesh between 1986 and 1989, put in 10 systems in different places. And right now there are almost 7 to 8 million systems in place. And what makes me very happy is that a lot of it is happening independent of me. I'm happy. I can associate with maybe about 1 million installations that I'm associated with. But what gives me really great joy is to see that others have taken up. But when I did it first time, I had to really practically make people believe that this even does produce electricity. So now there are about 8 million systems, 7 to 8. So this was the first one. You can see that's the school. Colony classroom. This is doing something else. Why is that doing again? Okay. This is a small home. Okay. This person was protesting coal mining, and then he got shot, really. And so one of the things that we did was I worked with the organization that's very committed to social justice and equity. Basically, that's been their economic justice. So to put a solar system in his house. Gypsies in Bangladesh are sometimes they move faster than government policies. They have adopted the small micro systems, and they pack their systems and go from one place to another. And there they are. And this is a Bangladesh bank. We're standing right there on top of the roof. There you are. That's the main building. And this is the first solar power silo in Bangladesh. Okay, now this is solar power irrigation easy, but at the same time you can also generate electricity for lighting with the proper storage. And this solar irrigation rickshaw, you can move it around. This is in India. Just move along. It's a microgrid. It's like a small, and a lot of these things are community powered, and that's another issue we'll come to, that who controls some of these things, or what kind of say people have, really. It doesn't have to be either or, really. So, but what kind of participation or say people have? This is UNESCO school in Ghana. Solar operating room in Zaire, Africa. This was January 19. There I'm sitting on top of a little rural hospital in Zimbabwe. And here we are putting it up, and here it's January 19, and one day it's a ward about 30 people, and it was all lighted with LED lights. And the school, that's the next day. This is a school we're visiting, and there's some children with the headmaster I'm standing with, and here the system is going up, And we're putting in the system, and the system is done. These are people who had no idea about really solar or any other renewable energy technologies per se. So I was just very happy to teach them how to do it. I climbed the other roofs and with them, and end of the week, they're just doing it, and I'm just taking a delight in seeing how much they have learned within that week. So that's what they did, and telling me that it's done. Okay, that's the school at night. And a little village home going to school, we have put in a small system like this, about 6 LED lights. So we can stretch those lights. Okay, a 47 watt standalone PV system in Boston installed in 1986. From what I know, that was one of the first solar systems in Boston, if not the first system. And it's a standalone system, so you know that what happened is that there was a blackout between March 13, 15, and 2012, 114 the Fenway, Unit 60 in Boston. And Rosie, my wife, my friend, my partner, unfortunately my wife of 50 years, she was coming from a meeting, and she could just look at the light in one of the buildings. There. So we didn't have power failure. We had solar lights and solar lamps in every room. Okay, so this is one of the really big things that are happening right now is in batteries, really. I think that this is there you have a 1.2 kilowatt each. Even 10 years ago, you would need half the room like this to put that many batteries. Right now, if a small refrigerator, like size of that, can store about 5 kilowatt of electricity. So things are just happening between Tesla, Sonnen, and MFES. Those are the 3 major ones, but China is investing big too, so we'll see a lot of it happening very, very soon. And that also gives people control over it. See, Tesla and that Sonnen, it's just about this size. In fact, about this size, and it can have up to 10 kilowatt of electricity. There you are, Elon Musk, talking about his new invention and the factory. And this is Tau Island, American Samoa. This is powering the island. And again, when we talk about Puerto Rico, it's also an island. In fact, the Earth is an island also, really. So you take that metaphor and symbol, you see that, a lot of this thing can happen in a larger scale. And the potential is there. Okay, so now we go to the last part, which is grid connected, which means now you don't see any, it's not connected to battery, the grid stores it. This is Gardner, this is the, in fact, first grid connected solar village or community in the United States and probably in the world. And here you are. Town hall, those are homes, this is town hall. And then you have Burger King. And that's Brandeis University. Okay, and then in Fenway, you can see blank wall. We put up a system there. This is an affordable housing building. And that's this transition. And okay, there you are. It's put up already. And there we are. Actually, Ross Gelspan, some of you may know, he's sitting right there with us when we inaugurated it. Okay, and then there's a hot water system on the building as well. And this is John B. Brown School of Mathematics and Science in Roxbury. Okay, this is Boston Arts Academy, that's the mayor. Menino, he passed away, of course, as you know. Okay, PBI, this is one of the first schools in the country to do this hybrid system. Okay, Boston Nature Center. Back of Boston Nature Center, Harvard University. Okay, this is Northeastern University. Let's go quickly so we can go back to it. Okay, this is solar carport and charging station, University of South Florida. And right at Roxbury Community College, just inaugurated. Okay, floating solar power plant in Japan. Okay, another floating power plant. Solar power floating agricultural farm. Floating power plant in China. And this is 4 Times Square, Manhattan. It's a 48-story. All the sides are made of solar panels. It's transparent solar panels. So windows are solar panels like this, but it generates electricity. And see, that's the building. And the reason it is like that, see, that's the new kind of cell, new generation of cells. There are multiple options that are coming up. And so this window could be generating. And the person, the owner, the developer owner, people asked them that, why are you putting on different sides? Usually people on the south side. He said that, you know what, time is coming when any source of energy, will turn to for generating, turn to really. And I want to put my money where my values are. I want to see the future, really, where I can do the most, really. So at this point, south is fine, but north, east, west, he put it up because he said that it may be a little costly right now, but that's okay. I still want to make a transition in that. So this is a train station. Okay, this is in California, a little Econo Lodge. And these are another reason to, something else to think about. Why are businesses going in that direction? Businesses would not go unless they felt that, they could also survive. Maybe they do not put maximization of profit, really. They have value also. So socially committed business, social entrepreneurship, these are also important dimensions that are emerging. That's a pet holiday, pet motel. IKEA is huge. And we were there, actually, Cupertino. You can see the Apple Ring. The entire thing is solar powered. And solar powered mobile gas stations. Okay, then by the turnpike. Yeah, gas station being powered, yeah. And then you have community solar, that's a new thing coming in. People can participate in it and feel, okay, wind, solar, there you have, I'm taking it from the Prudential building. Okay, this is in Singapore. Okay, and generating electricity for making solar panels in Japan. Okay, solar power stadium in Taiwan. And the last slide is Casa Puebla Community Center. You saw some pictures and a person speaking from it. So anyway, there were some, of course, we had to jump over, but this also gives us some sense. And so we are like tenant farmers chopping down the fence around our house or fuel when we should be using nature's inaccessible source of energy. Sun, wind, and tide. I'd put my money on the sun and solar energy. What a source of power. I hope we don't have to wait until oil and coal run out before we tackle that. So the issue is not new. People have thought about this long time, and but hopefully we will begin to listen to it with more seriousness. By 2050, we could get all the energy we need from renewable sources. This report shows that such a transition is not only possible, but also cost-effective, providing energy that is affordable for all and producing in ways that can be sustained by global economy and the planet. The energy report, 100% renewable energy by 2050, World Wildlife Fund. And this is the last slide. I think that the march is on. The renewable revolution is unstoppable. Vision, education, action, education, partnership projects. Time is of the essence. So let's join the revolution, and every step counts. So that's part of the slideshow. And thank you. Thank you for your patience. We worked through, humanly, we worked through some of the technical challenges, but sometimes we have to do that. So, okay, so please, now it's your floor right now. So please, comment, questions, criticism, so, please.
When you were in Puerto Rico, did you ever get in touch with the power company there, with FNA or?
Actually, I didn't go to Puerto Rico. Right, yeah. But I think that in other countries I have, and what happens is that the scenario is very diverse. Sometimes the power company is owned by the government, sometimes it's the private generation. So to me, it is an important question that what is the future scenario going to look like? And my sense is that it's going to be some combination. That to me is not as much of a concern whether it's private or public. Issue is that who benefits from it, how equitable it is, because some of the systems that are very large really require government participation, and it can be, and some systems that are can be done cooperatively, so the choices are there. But to me, the potential lies in diverse approach to the problem, not one or the other. So to me, more fundamental questions are, along with private ownership and public ownership, is really what is the place of social justice, equity. I mean, government is also basically is a public, it's a government capitalism really, and if the government is bad, really, then nobody can exploit people than the government can do. So we have to be aware of that too, really, and at the same time, private companies are also, sometimes they will do it for maximization of profit. So question is that where is it that it can be public or private, but the thing is that what are more fundamental? Are they serving, is there justice involved? What is equity involved? What is the equity issue? What is the social justice issue? So to your question, even though I've not gone there to Puerto Rico, I've gone to some other countries, and many times I have to sit down with the power company people because to see what they're doing, and at the same time they come and ask, really, and the private people who are interested in really in this technology. So I just feel that what is really important is that we don't lose sight of what really the vision is really. The vision based on equity, social justice, sustainability, addressing climate change really in a way that is, because climate change doesn't discriminate really, and the businesses are beginning to learn that too, really. You see it, and I think that that's a warning, but also there's some sense of, sort of sustainability of, ecology of sustainability really issue. So, please.
Having lived in Puerto Rico at one point for 10 years and living through one of the hurricanes, I learned a lot about how Puerto Rico functions, and I did a little bit of research in anticipation of this presentation. And one thing that is very clear to me that has taken place is that the government and FEMA have worked together to restore the system to what it was prior to the hurricane, which is very weak and leaves it continually in the same state as it was, which was very weak and vulnerable, perpetuating fossil fuel reliance. So when you talk about justice, the only thing I think we can do from this perspective is write your congressman and say, deal with Puerto Rico. It's very much a colony. Those people don't have a choice down there. PREPA, which is the name of the electric utility, there is bankrupt. Okay.
But they are actually producing power right now.
To the same, yes. They are producing the power.
I know it.
It's very vulnerable. I was there recently. Everyone has power. That's not the issue now. But they built the same weak system that they had before. So a hurricane 2 or 3 level is going to come and cause the same distance. There was no renewable aspect built into what they've done for the past year. Okay, so is that equitable? I don't think so. And now they're talking about selling off certain aspects of PREPA's centrally fueled system. 70% of the energy is created on the southern coast, 70% of the demand is on the north coast. They didn't change that at all. So it's crazy, And so the most that you can do that can make a difference to Puerto Rico is write your people in Washington and say, can you please deal with the island, economically and politically. because they don't really have much of a choice. That's my comment.
Right, thanks. Yeah, let's listen to some more. And also the point is there, again, I think for people to exercise their choice, they have to know. And what is important is that the reason one thing I find is that many times either the government or corporations get away with something because people do not know they have a choice. But when they begin to see they have a choice, small and large, it's like when you saw Naomi Klein showed basically showing a system like, this is exactly the system she was showing there. You know, you can see. Like this. Yeah. It just works. It's simple. And you have this other one. So you can just see, so these are very useful because, you know, when we say that how much is this? Well, many times local people, they buy kerosene, and that's very expensive, and they're hooked onto global colonizing system, even though it seems like a little bit of kerosene. What is that? So when you have this kind of thing, then you can say that, well, yeah, these things are made in, you know, where? In China or in the United States or in Germany. What I see is that the future is that it really, a lot of this thing can be made locally, and it's being made locally, you know, but you cannot really make oil locally, see. You cannot make gas and nuclear power locally, see. And or if it's locally done, that means it's controlled by, so there's a decentralization of power. When we talk about transition of power, there's a decentralization of power, and the power is transitioning from large centralized systems to decentralized, you know, people's hand. And so to me, that's why I think that it's important to really, you know, keep our hopes up that maybe, you know, a lot of these things are happening because people do not know, really. And if you know, I don't ever assume that I care about them more than they care, I'm talking about wherever we are. They live with some of the challenges. But what I can do, at least with humility, and is that really that if I have something to share, I can show it if choose, but they can choose things like that, you know. And I think that I see around the world, really, countries are making these things now, really. I've been in it for almost 30 years right now. They would not have any sense that there's something like this ever existed. So there are a lot of things can happen by, you know, providing the options that are there, educating people about the options, and the difference between centralized, you know, monolithic, you know, monopolistic system versus decentralized, you know, distributor system is that you can exercise your choice if you know about it. And
can you explain how a microgrid works, and is that something that people in Puerto Rico could do in a decentralized way?
Very much so. Microgrid is like, if you say that we take this, sure. Yeah, no, that's, yeah. If you just take this, let's say central square, okay? And now we get this electricity here probably coming from Hydro-Quebec, you know, as well as Midwest, all these things are being. So instead of that, there could be a small grid right here, really. And it would be in loop, you know, in a sense. So it's a self-contained, but it's a controlled, you know, its limit is within this parameter. But at the same time, you don't need to go beyond this because the others can do that. So it's essentially grid can be, because what if a national grid, practically grids are connected nationally right now. And some of the countries are building international grid, really. So, you know, there again, you can evaluate it for right or wrong, good or bad. But the point is that that also is happening. On the other hand, like some of the small villages right now, either they have decentralized standalone systems, really, or they said, all right, we're a marketplace, we'll create a microgrid. So basically, they have the energy from that grid, but that's locally generated. Okay, all right, please, and then, please, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the project that took place in Zimbabwe. Were you involved in the hospital specifically, or did you help out with that? And how exactly did that
What was the process behind that? Was the local government involved?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, briefly is that there's United Church of Christ in Zimbabwe, and the person who was the executive director of United Church of Christ, he came to United States to do his doctoral studies at Andover Newton Theological School. So he was doing, actually, his thesis was different. His thesis was history of United Church of Christ in Zimbabwe. But before he came, the United Church of Christ really decided on a climate change mission. That they said the spirituality and climate issue should be okay. So he came here, and then he contacted a number of people to say that how can I learn more about it and who can be helpful. So from one thing led to another, and in fact, Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light, which is he was talking to the executive director of it, and very coincidentally, just 3 years ago or so, honored me with the Rachel Carson Award, which is one of their awards. So they said, talk to Sajed. So while he was doing his doctoral studies, he came over, a number of times, and then the issue became, is that all right, can you come and teach us about it? And so that's why I mentioned that it's nice to go and talk and this thing, but to me, it's bad enough not knowing something. It is worse is knowing something and not be able to do something about it. So my approach has been that even in a small way, let's do something. So we just talked to several of our friends. They put together small funds, and I volunteered for it. So really, so we're there, and then I just suggested that you decide about some place. So they picked one hospital, one school, and 5 homes. So while we were there, I trained the people, and we installed these 5 home systems, 1 school and 1 hospital in 1 week. And now and I also helped them launch a social business. So that's what they're working on. And I helped them also make partnership with a company, with an organization. They're also socially committed organization in South Africa, so that they can work together to create some microfinancing for this system, because people know that it's cost effective, but the fact is the upfront cost was prohibitive. So those are things that they're working on right now, and I'm trying to be helpful in the way we can. And there are some other people, some of our friends have been very helpful with it too. Please.
Thanks for the kind of comprehensive look at a lot of things, and I want to actually speak to the earlier question on microgrids, and ironically to your question about the hospitals. I work in the solar industry, and I'm a developer for a solar company here in town. We do a lot of utility scale projects, and so on the microgrid question, I think what's really interesting that we're seeing right now is that they're being planned around kind of institutional demand and loads. Like take a hospital, take any sort of building with a predictable energy load, and if that's able to kind of provide the bulk of the demand, let's say for a 1 megawatt solar array or larger, it's basically like incrementally building off nodes to that that anchor institution, the source that's powering it, and then it's basically a series of switches and connections that would enable let's say 5, 10, 15, 20 homes to incrementally kind of connect to that, and with the integration of batteries and hardware and software that can allow these components to talk to one another and to look at demand profiles of the hospital with the related homes, etc. People who are planning the grid now, and one of the challenges that a place like Puerto is having in Puerto Rico is how do you migrate your systems that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years on a centralized basis to have this dynamic kind of conversation and orchestration of a very rapid and complex set of variables on the grid in real time. But we're living in a pretty amazing time right now where so much innovation is not just happening on the technology end, but in the implementation, the commercialization end, that the energy markets are quite literally turning upside down year after year. And we're in a very unique position to really hopefully make inroads, with a place like Puerto Rico, given all the resources that we have here in the U.S. And so actually, let's kind of make a plug, for what we're doing here in Boston, Massachusetts, and then it's kind of a mentality. I think that, I think we that's probably one of the reasons that we're all here. But, so for example, here in Massachusetts, on the state level for the solar program, they're incentivizing, basically through an increase to your power rate, a utility scale solar development approach that incorporates farming. And so one of the things that we grapple with here in Massachusetts is land being consumed by solar, losing farmland, losing forests, et cetera, to utility scale solar arrays that are designed with one use in mind, solar, right? It's like, think like the suburban development model. So one of the things that we're working on at my company, we've partnered with the Department of Energy here in Massachusetts, is a design tool to help enable more precise agricultural planning and merging that with solar energy design. So for example, within the next year to 2 years, we'll see projects here in Massachusetts that, like the carports we saw in that presentation, will be elevated, spaced, let's say a minimum of 8 to 10 feet, enough room to allow free migration of people, equipment, etc. for farming underneath and around. And this design tool that we're developing, open source, it'll be available not just for anyone in Massachusetts, but the way that we're developing it is that literally someone in Puerto Rico or the Philippines could take this tool and incorporate the angles of the sun for their location and basically do solar energy design on a utility scale that will enable them to look at the quality of sunlight per square foot. If it's direct sunlight, if it's ambient, if it's from full sun to 10, 20, 30%, shade, etc., per square foot within a utility scale solar array. Now people can get a sense of, plot sizes, crop planning, like what's the possibility for an acre, 2 acre, 3 acre plot of land, not just from a solar energy production perspective, but from like a food production perspective. And I think that we live in an amazing place, Boston, which is full of these intellectual resources and people who are problem solvers. And I think that we're all doing things in our own, worlds that if we can just, kind of put our capitalist, like, hold, clutch your pearls to your chest tendencies and realize that, like, we can make a big impact by just tweaking our perspective. Hopefully in a year or two, people can quickly realize that, we don't have to design a new widget, it's just a new approach to implementation. And I don't know, hopefully, with a place like Puerto Rico, and all the troubles that the utilities have, who knows, maybe they're like off-grid or these hybrid approaches on a farm that could hopefully enable, a different perspective. So anyway, that's...
installations like that?
Yeah, so there's a pilot project at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. So the Agricultural Extension School is really building out a robust program on how to merge farming with solar energy, production. And so then, my company, along with a dozen others, are permitting, developing, and submitting for projects that are going to do everything from incorporate like rotational grazing for small-scale livestock to high ecological diversity, crop plans to growing cranberries to apiaries. I think what's a really cool thing is that when you have the energy and agricultural worlds coming together, we're able to look at it from a new perspective, and we can influence things that maybe weren't so easy to do before. So yeah, I guess stay tuned, but like literally in a couple of years, like we'll be doing things very differently here in Massachusetts, and we can take those lessons wherever we want to go. So, yeah.
That's very
I'm passionate about the food justice and energy justice. I think to your point are
that's very commendable. I appreciate you sharing that. So this is one of the things that I mentioned that when we try something, even with all the potential that we see, there can be new challenges. But then we address that, and I think that if land wasn't an issue, that's one thing. There are systems right now. The largest system, just flat solar field, is in China, about 1,200 to 1,300, really megawatt, really, one system. And what they have also done is that they have built some huge solar systems on discarded coal mines, really. So the land is just so devastated, they're building. So in that case, they're saying that their land is not an issue here, but other places it is. Hiroshima is designing some plants just the way you said, really, grow food and solar. Wind and food farm has become more, more known right now. But solar field and agriculture farm, that's also coming. And then also, so floating solar called photovoltaics, floating solar farms, really, put in water. If it's a lake or a little corner of a pond. So there are a lot of these things are happening, and that's what I feel that one of the things that we can really greatly feel inspired by, which is sometimes, a good thing to have, find some inspiration, is that all the possibilities that are there, or they're already here. It's really for us to know, and especially because we have really continually told that this is not possible, we have to just say. So I appreciate all the things, and in fact, for this technological reason, we skipped almost 20 slides that had solar fields and agriculture together as well in Hiroshima and other places. But I appreciate you saying it. So you and then you, please.
I think it's exciting, all the available technology. And we can imagine what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'm sitting here thinking about Naomi Klein's last point, which is, there's an inevitable clash coming on that island between the money interests and the corporate power structure that wants to go down the way they want to go down, enforcing austerity programs and privatization compared to what the people of the island want, And so it's a real power struggle that something's going to give somewhere, and to date it's usually the money interests that win, right? And so I'm sitting here wondering, besides writing a letter to my congressperson saying, hey, please pay attention to Puerto Rico, and this is what I think should happen, what is it that we can do collectively other than, how do you, I can support the people in Puerto Rico with some monetary donations and prayers at night, but it's a real, it's a real serious issue, that goes beyond this beautiful technological conversation, which we all have a sense it's possible, and it's great to have a vision, right?
I think that's sort of something that A.G. Wells said, that survival is a race between education and catastrophe. See, we may not be able to give people the money they need, but before that, information and education we can spread as much as possible. That also requires money. And so to me, what I find hopeful is that a lot of this thing can be shared information, not in a paternalistic and chauvinistic way that I'm teaching you. No, it's just sharing of information. A lot of this thing can be shared, things that are already available. You see, it's not something in the future, it's already available. And that's what I find most of that, and people get inspired by, wow, this is already available. Of course, available doesn't mean that, yes, I can just go and buy it from there. But the point is that technologies are there, cost effectiveness is there, and there's all these now issues of climate footprint, a climate issue, ecological footprint, social justice footprint, all these things are coming together. So when some of these things synergize, there's a huge potential. And to me, really, and that is not the same thing as really, unless I could give $3 billion to Puerto Rico, nothing would happen. It's not that. So challenges there. I don't undermine it. We should be cognizant of that. The challenge is there, and the damages can happen so fast, really. And how many, when we have this fire, how many days did it take to now California is still burning? It took a few minutes for paradise to vanish, really. And so to me, that is all count. That saying that climate change has something to do with it. None of these things like this never happen for one reason. But at this point, more and more people are realizing that climate change has a great deal to do with it, really. And I think that, so at this, let's address that. And then at the same time, when we address that from multiple angles, I think there's a huge potential. So the challenge is not minimized, really, but at the same time, Naomi Klein's call it warning or advice is very pertinent. It is a race, really, but at the same time, the potential in this, hope and potential in this race is that there's a lot of the things can be done right now. Things we need to do, what can be done is available right now.
A question to you, because I believe that your expertise could be so incredibly useful. But how do you make inroads to an obstinate government and FEMA that has vision that was like this? How do you make inroads? It's not like the people don't have ideas.
Right.
But what they fostered was everyone going out and buying electric plants, and then people were coughing and getting sick off the diesel fuels. Not kerosene, but diesel fuels. And so, they need more solar, but it's hard to, you have already a very developed location there. This is not some little village, a series of little villages in Puerto Rico. It's a highly developed place that went plump. And so, how would you impact, it's all locked up now. There is no incentive to doing solar because everybody has their lights back on until the next big wind comes.
Right.
They've done nothing to change the system.
It is a very challenge. At the same time, let me take some answer from yourself. See, our advocacy. We don't all have to necessarily, do what I do or somebody else does. We all have a role to play. And what I really want to keep emphasizing is that look at what you can do. And then, he's trying to do something very concrete, really. But he will go much further if he felt that there's a constituency behind your efforts. And I think that politicians are basically, there are all kinds of politicians, but generally they are basically looking at what my constituency wants, really. And I think because they want to be in power, really. And I think that, and offices. So to me, it is not an easy challenge, but at the same time, I think the answer lies in really, multiple approaches to it, and the answer is as diverse as the problem is, really.
Yes, but your topic, what drew me to come here tonight, was decolonization of Puerto Rico's electric grid.
Right.
So I want to know what you think about decolonizing Puerto Rico's.
Right. Well, let's look at it in a practical way. I think that in a way, again, of course, we are doing it here, but the way it would be that what are different ways that we can encourage renewable energy uses there? That would be one response to that, because as I said, that don't, let's also try to have the perspective of how colonization happens and how even kerosene is a big colonial means, you see. People don't, so let's try to reduce that, you see. Let's try to generate, local way that people can cook their food. There's unlimited energy there for renewable energy, solar energy, to this thing. But it involves technology, it involves education, and at the same time, to me, the question always becomes, I've gone to other countries, I've sat with government people, and then government people sometimes are many times controlled by, not even their own government. National governments are puppets, most of them are really. They can do a lot of things on their, basically within their limitations, but a lot of this energy and this thing, for years, World Bank has been bankrolling disasters around the world, really. And countries were, buying into it or being forced to buy into it. Those things are changing because people are saying that, no, this is not. So World Bank has also good things too, really. So to me, again, the answer is not as simple, and I would not have the answer saying that, okay, I'm going to go there. No, it's not. But at least what I feel is that how do you bring this information to Puerto Rico? And they have information also. Can you build bridges with them, really? So but we can maybe come back to some of this thing before. Okay, yeah, here. And then after that, George, yeah.
My name is Ibrahim Lopez, I'm Puerto Rican. I just came here from Puerto Rico. I have been researching Puerto Rico's energy issues for the past 3 years, and for decolonizing Puerto Rico, ideally we would have to decolonize Puerto Rico as a whole, like decolonize it from its colonial status, but In terms of its energy, it's very complicated and it's already locked in a pathway due to how the system works. So the only way to break through that pathway would be, in my opinion, on my research that I've done, is actually giving the tools to the communities and the education to the community to actually get off the grid, because the transition that is coming to Puerto Rico, the privatization that is coming to Puerto Rico, is going to be an economic burden to the rest of the society, and it's still going to be vulnerable to climate disruption. So in terms of this context, this new geographical context of being in Boston, I would see the best way is to contact institutions such as Casa Pueblo, nonprofit organizations that do want that objective and that do align with that, and giving them the technology necessary for giving that to the communities and educate them and knowing the value of that technology. I think that would be the best way. Another way could be talking to your Congress people and actually telling them to require Puerto Rico to set its sights on transforming its electricity grid generation to 100% renewables. That is happening right now. There is a bill in the privatization bill that they want to get to that 100% renewable energy by 2020, 2030. But PREPA as an institution, Republicans in the Congress, private American energy companies are lobbying to not do that and to try to displace to liquefy natural gas. So it's keeping the pressure on keeping a narrative so that the government can take the appropriate policies.
I just have a quick question. What do you think should a large portion of Puerto Ricans go off the grid? Is that illegal currently? You know, because in the United States
it's not illegal. And actually, after Hurricane Maria, the governor of Puerto Rico and the then president of the PREPA, he was talking in the United States Congress, and they actually told Congress members that 350 rural communities in Puerto Rico would never see reconnection to the electricity grid after Maria. Thankfully that happened. It happened with hurdles. It happened with a lot of corruption controversies. But if we now know that reconstruction by FEMA's budget is creating a new system, which is the same as vulnerable as it was before, the better option would be giving communities the tools to actually be off-grid, but they're safe and they know how to manage, and it will not go out, the power won't go out.
I have a question for you.
Another question.
Yeah, you can talk.
Well,
my understanding is that FEMA can't do new construction. They can only go back to the level that it was before, using the technology that was there before. The governor of Puerto Rico is a graduate of MIT. In December of last year, there was a conference, a closed conference at MIT where he consulted with them. Later, there was an open conference in New York with a new plan for Puerto Rico, which would have something like 150 microgrids. Whether that's going to happen or not, I do not know. My own experience is in trying to connect with people in Puerto Rico, there's no way to do it. The kind of things that you're talking about and you're talking about, small-scale solar, the lights that you have there are about $30 to $50, right? You can buy a solar light-in charger or a hand-crank light-in charger online for about $10 a pop, right? And these things are there. You can charge your phone with it if you're lucky. You don't have an iPhone. It's a 3-volt system rather than a 5-volt system. But I've found, in trying to talk to people about this, that the small scale does not register. I mentioned to some people online that, oh, when we did a solar van, we had an extra battery that was charging after the battery for the motor charged, so we had electricity, right? Why doesn't every internal combustion engine vehicle in Puerto Rico have the same thing? Oh, we're not interested in that. I remember reading a story about a woman in Africa who would bike 10 to 20 miles a day to charge her phone. And I went, this is crazy. You're biking, you could put a charger on your bike, you can charge your phone.
You can charge them this.
The combination of these kinds of things, little small scale solar for a light or a phone, some kind of communication, a bike and a battery, and you can have your computer, you can have your communications, you can have your light. And it would enable what I would call the solar Swadeshi, right? Gandhian economics, local production. It would even allow people to have a grid strike and say, I'm not going to use grid electricity for the next week. And for things that people can do, December 10th, Sunrise Movement is having another demonstration and lobbying day in Washington, D.C. in support of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's proposal for a new Green Deal or a Green New Deal. You can go to her site and look at what it is. And she's talking about 10 years from the development of a plan that a select committee in what will be the revitalized Climate Change Committee under the Democratic House, right? To have a plan that within 10 years, close to 100%, deal with climate change, all of these things. A few other things. The Japanese have been doing the combination of agriculture and PV for 10 years. And they discovered, oh yeah, plants don't need a third of the sunlight that falls on them, so we can shade a third with PV. So they may have, you probably know whether or not
Germany, France, like a lot of European countries, I mean, yeah, to your exact point, like there are things going on that, yeah.
All around the world. So, this stuff has been happening, it's not just us. But, there are tools available to our hands. There is this idea of a Green New Deal. There is a consortium of Caribbean island nations which has been working on going renewable for the last decade. Rocky Mountain Institute has been involved in that planning. There's going to be the guy who does Virgin Airlines. He has a house in the Caribbean. He's talked about a Marshall Plan for the British Caribbean. So Dominica was not hit as hard because they had already hardened their stuff. So there are a number of models, there are a number of initiatives going on. The problem is that people don't connect and they don't contact each other. They think that I'm the person who's inventing this. But there's all this stuff going on around it all the time. All the time, right? So the technology is rolling. At this point in time, solar, wind, with batteries are actually the lowest cost energy on a utility scale and on a housing scale, individual housing scale, in many, many regions of this country and the world. So
I
things
just
are
like
going
to
to change.
for a second to say, because you made an excellent point, this Green New Deal, we only have one Massachusetts delegation member, as I understand it, who has signed on, and that's Dan Presley. So if you're in her district, thank her, and if you have some other member of Congress, call them and say, sign on to the Green New Deal. I think that's one thing we really should do.
Would it be only the House or the Senate?
It's only the House.
It's only the House right now.
It's only the House. The Senate is controlled by Republicans.
Kennedy.
Passing signs, Hamilton. Okay, so all, the rest of the delegates?
That's late.
None of us have signed yet.
Wow, they need to sign, yeah? So,
Yeah, I guess I have a question maybe for you about whether we should be trying to go towards like utility scale solar, or basically like right now we have these privatized energy corporations that are like feeding us oil and stuff like that because it's not centralized. But I read this book, Energy Democracy, that was basically saying like we have two paths. One is like the localized energy grid, and another is one where energy companies still own all the solar all the renewable energy, and they're still selling it to us when we really could own it ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you have any idea as to like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it kind of speaks to this like decades-long question of like having energy markets regulated or deregulated. And in some states, utilities are prevented from owning generation assets. Like in Massachusetts, like National Grid and Eversource can only own transmission. And so, where I'm from in Ohio, unfortunately, you've got utilities who own transmission, distribution, and generation, like coal. So you've got guys like Bob Murray speaking in the ear of Trump to basically upend energy markets to prop coal up at this in this insanely illogical way. So I think that like in the future, I think that utilities are going to need to evolve to a service model, and that is probably going to take various geographic forms. So like in the context of Puerto Rico, you could have, everything from your, mom and pop installation company to, hopefully if these discussions on creating more microgrids and maybe taking power out of PREPA and maybe creating more like local municipal utilities, maybe that's really hopefully going to allow for a lot of innovation, because I think unless it's distributed into the hands of a lot of like people who can effectively manage the grid themselves, it's going to take a lot longer for things to happen.
Do you think community choice aggregation is one form of altering how power is?
It's been done. It's happening in a lot of different places. I know that it sometimes depends on legislation in a given state that enables that type of interaction with the market. I don't know enough about Puerto Rico in the sense of how empowered the legislature is there to set laws that govern the energy markets, but I suspect that there's, from the decolonization perspective, and that's what we're here to kind of talk about, there's a lot that needs to happen above and beyond renewable energy that we need to talk about. And I think personally, letting people talk and just doing a lot more listening is probably a great thing that we can all do.
I think that to prepare the time to, I think that a lot of, maybe there's been some answers, there's also many questions, and that's not bad, really. My hope is that we'll continue to. At the same time, some of the thing can be, I think, put before us, that is the transition from non-renewable to renewable. That's a fundamental transition. From centralized controlling power to decentralized power. That's another transition. From basically social oppression to social justice. These things are fundamental, really. And when that happens, when we look at the problem, the problem has many faces, and solutions are also many faces. So to me, really, when people say that, well, should it be centralized or not centralized? I said, well, there's place for both, depending what's most appropriate. And I think should it be private or public? Well, something public can do, something private can do. Fundamental issue is that, is it equitable? It is benefiting people or not? Because one of the things that is also becoming clear to a lot of the business people is that they will breathe the same air. They drink the same water. They're under the same sun, and they cannot escape it. And that's really the ecology of interdependence, really. And that is beginning to sense. So to me, with that awareness, I don't have to, condemn anybody. We have to say that we are at it together. Either we survive together or we are doomed together, really. So turn it around in a positive way, that we can survive together, we can also work together in our own ways with its fundamental values. Then from general to more particular, my sense is that here, I appreciate very much what you said about your research in Puerto Rico. I think that, again, MAPA is doing a lot of things, but to me, some of the examples that I see are organizations like this, building a bridge with a local organization there. And you're here. So if there are some possibilities of making a partnership, and you don't have to do everything, really, but that building a bridge sometime, providing some support, providing some information, providing education, and providing some support for, grassroots, projects or systems can go a long way. I have seen villages who have, made, rural villages, they have made grid obsolete because they don't need it, because they know they rely on it, on non-grid, decentralized applications. Grid says that, we cannot convince them because grids are failing everywhere, and these people are now aware of that. They don't want grid to come in there. So at the same time, in the meantime, the distributed generation with battery becoming more, environmentally acceptable and more having more storage. There's a whole revolution happening there. So nurture that application. So that's why I also feel that build bridges, build partnership, and in practical way take some projects. If any way I can be helpful, I'll be happy to be helpful. I'd like to learn more. So, but that's, I think, it's not a big thing, but every little bit thing. And so I think that issues of partnership and collaboration, building bridges, and setting some examples of what can be in a practical way, providing educational information to people who are really trying to do something. I don't have to really feel that I have to impose it on them. I have to just make it available to them. So there's a lot of potential to that. The solution lies in diverse approach to the multifaceted problem. And I think that my hope lies in that there's so many ways this can be addressed, really, that we need to be just aware of that and act on it. So, any last one, please?
Sure. I think everyone has great input. Thanks for the shout out to the Home Insight. Technology's there. When you brought the solar to Bangladesh in '86, it was probably $40 a watt. Guess what? It's 40 cents a watt. In 1990, I built a solar-powered car, raced it from Florida to Michigan, did the batteries, all off the sun, 1,100 miles in 10 days against 31 schools. That was 30 years ago. We started this wind project in '97, put the first machines in '01. The technology's there. Education is certainly necessary. Educating communities. At this point, it's economics. Once people get it in their head that it's purely economics, access to credit, access to the technology and the knowledge on how to install, maintain, and operate. But I'll tell you what, you remember solar calculators? You put it on your desk and it just works? That's solar. When the sun's shining, it's on. Batteries, storage, that's important too. But a lot of these people, the 1 billion people that don't go home and flip on a light switch or turn on their water faucet, the biggest problem they have is access to credit and the ability to finance these things over a long period of time. Otherwise, they're spending their daily or weekly allotment on either food, water, or some sort of heat or fuel to cook or to read by. So don't fool yourself. We don't need any more technology. Yes, innovation is great. More efficient solar cell panel is great. It's access to credit and capital markets, economics, probably things like microfinancing. I could bring, I'll tell you right now, I could bring clean energy and clean water to 1 billion people in 2 or 3 years. All I need is something based on blockchain and someone like Bill Gates to throw in maybe $1 billion. And again, this access to credit. That's the big thing, at least from my 30 years in the field. So I don't know how you feel.
Well, I think that's point well made, and that's why when I think about a project, I don't think about just putting a technology over it. It becomes the education about it, application of it, as well as creating a social business process, really. Social business is a good sense, really, how to finance it, really. And to me, I have done a lot of research and looked at made a lot of comparison between cost of kerosene as cost of solar energy. Solar energy, over time is sometimes up to 15, 20 times cheaper than kerosene. So what there is really that the poorest people are paying the highest price. That's morally unacceptable. And when I was talking to this group of people, there's a donors consortium in Bangladesh, all World Bank, UN, and all this, I said that, there's a moral crisis here. But initially, they were all so really feeling, well, doing something for the poor, we can do these things. I said, that's not the point. The point is that it's a moral crisis. We're making the poor people pay the highest price for the energy, whereas oil and gas, those are being subsidized. And these poor people are, paying the highest price and pollution from, so whole another thing. So there's a moral dimension to it, there's economic dimension to it, there's a political dimension to it, there's a social, cultural dimension to it. All of these things are coming together right now. And so that's what I feel is that at this point, I feel that when I work like in Zimbabwe, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, a lot of these places, I have worked with creating microcredit system as part of the project. So that people can feel, oh, I could not pay, let's say, $300 upfront, really. But if I pay $15 a month, because what I pay for kerosene, I can get this system. Well, they did not equate that in the beginning. I talked to, in 87, Professor Yunus, Grameen Bank, I talked to him, personally, it wasn't hitting him really that, well, we are bankers, really, we don't really see this, but now Grameen Bank is one of the leaders in this, so things change. Really. But I talked to him personally, it wasn't hitting. I said that, well, of course, what we need is not more, solar, this thing, we need also with solar, we need financing. And the thing is that if we can match monthly payment with their energy expense, the person is, in 2 days, the person make a transition from the other. So what means you create solar cooperatives so that it's not benefiting one person with the capital in the bank or somewhere else, but point is that it benefits. And there are examples, Enersol in the Dominican Republic is one excellent example of doing that. And I've done some of them myself as well. So it can be done. You make things accessible, it makes affordable, and affordable doesn't mean that you take the price down necessarily, because if I cannot. Affordable means how is it affordable? Why is a car affordable to me, really? If it was I had to pay whatever $23,000, $25,000 for my Prius, I could not really. But if I just said that, well, monthly I'll pay for this, I can do it really. Same thing with a $300 system, $200 system. For some $100 system, it's not possible to pay up front. But all right, break it up over time and create a sort of a social business with them so they're in charge. And it's amazing what they can learn, and in turn what they can teach. So to me, it has to be a holistic, comprehensive approach and multifaceted challenge, but their solutions are also multifaceted, and potential is also coming from all this thing. It's not this versus that, but with the bottom line of, as I said, that environmental, the same issues, political issues, economic issues, social justice issues, equity issues, if those are kept in place, sustainability issues, if those things kept in place, whichever way we can, let's join in and do our part, because we breathe the same, wherever we are, we breathe the same air, we drink the same water, we stand on the same soil, under the same sun. That's the message that sometimes has to be pressed. So, thank you.